Okay, if there's anyone else in the waiting room, Isa, is there someone else? Or maybe we can start. We
No, people
are
are slowly coming in, but we can start, I think. Yeah.
okay, so let's start. So good morning again, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on energy poverty and gender in the European Union. My name is Clara, and I will be moderating today's session. And before we begin, just two quick practical notes. So first, that this session is being recorded, and after this webinar, we will send you all the recording of the session. And also, please feel free to use the chat during the whole session. We really want to hear from you. So please you can write there if you have questions or comments, and we will try to collect them and answer all the questions in the end of the session. So let me briefly frame why are we here today. So this webinar is part of Funding Fair Futures. This is an initiative dedicated to strengthening the climate movement and building capacities for an inclusive and just transformation. And at its core, the initiative works to ensure that the needs and perspectives of diverse stakeholders, especially those of often marginalized communities, are heard and meaningfully reflected in climate action. As part of Funding Fair Futures project, a coalition of 37 grassroots and civil society organizations is working to strengthen capacities around fair housing and fair energy for all. Within this collaboration, WECF focuses especially on raising awareness about the link between energy poverty and gender. So, of course, the experts that we have today will go onto this topic because they work on this in different fields, but they are experts. But just to briefly start and to see if we are all in the same page, in simple terms, what do we mean when we speak about energy poverty? So energy poverty means that households does not have the proper access to essential energy services. These are not luxuries, these are basic needs. We are talking about being able to heat or cool your home, have water or proper lighting and electricity. Energy poverty happens when a family cannot afford the basic services or when their homes are not energy efficient. It is often linked to low income, to high energy bills, and housing conditions. So when we are speaking about energy poverty, it's not only about energy prices. It is also about income levels, housing quality, public policies, and social inequalities. So the experts that we have today will explore this much more depth. But there is something very important that from WECF we really want to highlight from the beginning, and it is that energy poverty is not gender neutral. Across Europe, inadequate policy design, together with the lack of resources, information, and accessible technologies, has created a situation where energy regulation can end up pushing people out of their homes instead of protecting them. So current estimates show that 9.2% of people in the European Union are unable to keep their homes warm during winter. In this situation, women are disproportionately affected by energy poverty, as Marilise and also Christina and Irene will explain way better than now. And looking through this, looking at this problem through an intersectional perspective, allow us to understand more the problem. So just before we start and we go to our speakers today, and before we move to the first one, I would like to start with a very quick check-in. So I would like you to answer in the chat only with one word from your perspective. What is the main factor contributing to energy poverty in your context? It is the income, it is energy prices, housing quality, administrative barriers, care responsibilities, all of this, or something else that comes up. So please just write one word in the chat box just to see where are we today. So if it's income, energy prices, housing quality, administrative barriers, care responsibilities, or something else. So here we can see prices, housing, caring responsibilities, poorly isolated buildings. Okay, so very different answers. Care, again, a combination of all of this. Yes. Quality of housing. Yes, well, thank you. And it is already very interesting to see the diversity of perspectives. And I think that you will notice during this webinar and during the session how interconnected many of these factors are. So thank you for your answers. And to begin our discussion today, I'm very pleased to introduce to our first speaker, Marilise Louvet. Marilise is an energy, climate, and gender project manager at Women Engaged for a Common Future, and she will help us deepen our understanding on the gender dimension of energy poverty. So Marilise, thank you very much for being with us today, and the floor is yours, please.
Thanks, Clara, and hi, everyone. I will share my screen. I also would like to share that I'm also a project manager for WCF of the Gender for Power project, which is a European project that aims to improve living condition of people affected by energy poverty through gender responsive, community-led actions and multi-stakeholder approaches that maybe I can give some examples later on. WCF and my colleagues also conducted a study on gender segregated data on energy poverty in 6 European countries on behalf of the ESC, the European Economic and Social Committee, that I can also share with you later. As Clara said, I will dive with you now on some basis understanding on energy poverty, its definition, legal definition when it exists, the risk factors, some calculation methods also, and then its link with gender. So let's start with the definition, because we observe different definitions on energy poverty when they exist, and the EU has adopted one in the Energy Efficiency Directive that we will read together to start with. So energy poverty is a household lack of access to essential energy services that will provide basic levels and decent standards of living and health. It includes adequate heating, hot water, cooling, lighting, and energy to power appliance. And this can be caused by a combination of factors that includes at least non-affordability, insufficient disposable income, high energy expenditure, and poor energy efficiency of homes. But as it is also mentioned in this definition, it is very difficult to align one definition by country due to a very different context of building stock, of climate, of politics, of social-cultural factors. And actually trying to adopt one definition could also lead to the risk of having an inappropriate definition per context. At this day, very few countries have defined energy poverty at national level. Spain adopted one in 2019 in its national strategy against energy poverty. But for example, Germany does not define it and instead treats it as a subdimension of labor and income poverty. And at the moment, the main calculation and national calculation that are made are on expenditure-based data. But there are more methods that also reflect the different level, different lived experience of energy poverty, but also constitute a challenge for policy formulation and actions to address it. So what are these calculations at the EU level? There is two types of indicator. The expenditure-based indicators and the consensual approach indicators. So the expenditure-based indicators use monetary values. You have the 2M indicator on the top left of the picture, which is when the energy costs represent a high share of expenditure compared to the national median. Then there is the M on 2 indicator, which is the low absolute energy expenditure, which will be below the national median of energy consumptions, which is the top right map. And then you have the consensual approach indicators, which these ones are based on self-reported assessment of housing conditions, with the AW indicator, with will be people that are assessing that they manage to keep their house warm. And the UB indicators, which are the ones that report not being able to pay their utility bills. So when we look at the maps, you can really see that depending on the measurement we use, we obtain different percentage of people affected by energy poverty. And this is why it's important to have a broad vision of it and a broad vision of calculation, and not only one method, but really adapt it case by case, depending on context. National, but also sometimes local. In addition, there is different risk factor of energy poverty, and the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, HEPA, refers to 5 main categories. The socio-demographic characteristic, the household composition, which will be how many children or elderly parents are in care in the household, the health of the people in the household, but also the energy literacy and cultural factors. And in the ESC study, we have highlighted that overall the issue of energy poverty is increasingly being integrated into the European Commission policy documents, but the characterization and the breakdown of the population group affected by energy poverty is still lacking. And especially when we look on the existence of gender considerations in policy documents related to energy poverty, which is very often lacking, while gender constitutes a clear risk of energy poverty. And this can be illustrated by looking at the household structure, where there is a high proportion of single-person household with children that are at risk of poverty and social exclusion. And 85% of these single households are led by women and face particular challenges in the division of paid work and unpaid care work. We will see it a bit later. Also looking at housing quality and socio-demographic factors, there is a low energy efficiency building that often that are often located in poorer neighborhoods and are predominantly occupied by groups that face intersecting forms of structural exclusion, many of which are predominantly women. Also, the unequal relationships between tenants and landlords also give rise to concrete risk of energy poverty, especially when considering the interfaces between migration and ethnicity. What this means in practice is that many women live in rental housing with poor energy efficiency, where they cannot decide on renovation, for example. So gender, income, housing quality, and migration background often intersect, and this increases the risk of energy poverty. But gender disparities play a pivotal role in energy poverty, with women and especially elderly women and single mothers being disproportionately affected by energy poverty due to intersecting physiological, economic, social, and health-related factors. So the first physiological dimension deals with the impact energy poverty has on the body. Age is a significant factor in dealing with heat and cold stress, with young children and older people being particularly vulnerable. Women have also greater sensitivity to extreme temperature, both cold and heat, which increase their vulnerability in underheated or poorly isolated home. The longer life expectancy of women also means a higher share of elderly women living alone, with 23% of older women versus 18% of men in the EU facing poverty, also often due to the gender pension gap. On the health dimension, inadequate cooling or heating leads to respiratory and cardiovascular disease. It also creates poor mental health due to an increased stress, reduced well-being, comfort, but also can lead to depression. And reported stress and depression rates are significantly higher among those facing energy poverty, and especially women. Yeah, the strongest association between energy poverty and health was found in chronic bronchitis, asthma, and depression and anxiety. On the economic dimension, the gender pay gap and gender pension gap limit women's financial resilience, with women heading nearly 85% of single-parent households in the EU, as we saw, and face a higher risk of poverty. With younger mothers and women with young children being the least employed parent group in the EU. There is also less time for paid work, especially for single parents due to unpaid care work. Also in the economical sphere, compared to men, women are less likely to work full-time, more likely to be employed in lower paid occupation, and less likely to progress in their career. So single parents, mostly women, carry both paid and unpaid work, which makes it harder to afford than rising energy costs or invest in renovation or solar energy, for example. And the final sphere or dimension, the social and cultural, with a gender division of labor, which generally assigns women the responsibility for the provision of household energy in relation to their sphere of influence in the household. And on the other spheres, women do not have equal voices on policy and economy, and yeah, their interests are underrepresented in decision-making spaces, and there is a lack of role models to drive changes. And finally, the social stigma and isolation, which is linked to energy poverty, amplify its impact and can affect also education, work, and social inclusion. Besides this gender approach, which is really binary men women due to most of the time sex disaggregated data and not gendered, I would like also to share some intersectional reflection on the aspect of energy
Además de
poverty.
estas reflexiones,
We
quisiera
discussed
compartir
already about the intersection of gender, migration background, and economic status, with women and especially older women being at a higher risk of falling into energy poverty due to the gender pay and pension gap. But this burden is increased for women with migration background. In Germany, there is some research that have showed that people with migration background face a lot of discrimination in accessible, affordable living spaces, which also leads to fewer opportunities to save money for renewable energy supplies, for example. But might also lead to them less engaging in conversation with landlords to do renovation, for example, having the fear of losing their apartment due to a very high competition, especially with the example in Munich. We had the example of a woman not trying to install solar balcony module, but housing company being completely against it, or not being against it, but having a very low, very high list of requirements, and then very bureaucratic requirements, which at the end the person gave up to because of fear of engaging into arguments with the landlord. Yeah, when we talk about energy poverty also, and we want to adopt gender equal or gender responsive actions, we also we must be careful about the burden of responsibility feeling on energy management, which is a bit difficult to assess because we usually assess the household per se, and also the responsibility of energy use and cost, which is due to care work with like using a washing machine or cooking or because there is often discourses and support actions that are promoting energy savings, reduction of energy consumptions, etc. But when we talk about people affected by energy poverty, they have very often very low energy consumptions. So we should rather adopt discourses about supporting this household in having access to renovation programs or having energy cost savings, joining energy communities, for example, rather than reducing energy consumption with sustainability reasons. Also on masculinities, because in heterosexual and traditional household where the man is seen as a breadwinner, if this breadwinner is not earning enough bread, this can also lead to isolation, depression, and alcoholism. And I also wanted to talk about the LGBTQI plus community because there is a very little data on the nexus between the community and energy poverty. But there was a study in May 2025 from experience from Brazil showing that gender diverse people and especially trans persons are especially vulnerable to extreme heat and are facing several barriers both in public and private sphere. For example, with family rejection and homelessness, which is frequently experienced by the LGBTQI plus youth, which leads to unsustainable living conditions that lack sufficient cooling options. They might also lack a safe environment in going to public cooling spaces that are organized by the city, for example, and can face financial burdens due to medications they might take, as well as their limited legal protection that exists in some countries that can also constitute an additional obstacle in accessing public services designed to mitigate the effect of extreme heat. Yeah, so in general, I would like to finish on the fact that expectation of gender roles in the societies are highly regional. It's really important to collect gender disaggregated data in order to adopt then adapted measures. But also to maybe open the discussion for later, I would like to add that across all contexts, energy poverty is closely linked to housing quality, income, gender, age, migration status, and local energy infrastructures, and that in this scope, energy communities are really emerging as transformative instruments. Their impact are still a bit affected by some barriers, but yeah, they really represent a great opportunity and we can maybe discuss it later. So that's it for me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marie-Lise. It was very interesting. And yeah, your presentation showed how energy poverty is multidimensional. And I think the most important is why gender and also an intersectional perspective is essential to really understand who is most affected in this situation. I think it's also very important that you remind us that recognizing the problem, of course, it's absolutely important, but it's not enough. And we need better data, better targeting, and stronger policy responses. And this is a key issue for advocacy, of course, that this connects us directly to the policy dimension. And that's why we have today with us Christina. Thank you, Christina, for being here today. I'm very happy to introduce you to Christina Eisfeld. She's a technical expert with a PhD and over a decade of experience in leading EU-funded projects on energy transition, social policy, and climate governance. She works at the intersection of climate action and social justice, translating European policy frameworks into practical solutions at local, regional levels. She holds a doctorate from the University of Vienna and lectures on the European Green Deal and social climate policy, linking research with real-world implementation. Thank you, Christina, for joining, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Clara, Isa, and Vuka as well, for organizing this very interesting webinar today. Thank you for inviting me. I'm not lecturing though anymore. Have been. Okay. So let me try to share my screen. Can you see something?
Yeah, we can see it.
Hold on, then I just put it on the big slides. Okay. So today I brought you some slides in my two roles that I have actually. So the first part will focus on the evolution of energy poverty, and I will talk from the perspective of Climate Alliance, and then I will move on and talk from the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub experience that we also gathered, and I was asked to be very practical. So I try to gather knowledge from several meetings, working groups, but also projects that are ongoing, and I try to condense them to have one particular example. And without further ado, I'm going to start with a little bit of the historic background and the evolution of energy poverty in the EU sphere. So basically to understand especially how energy poverty is addressed today and at the EU level, it really helps to have a short look what has been done. So the term of fuel poverty back in the day came basically from the United Kingdom in the 90s. Mainly there was a really important publication by Brenda Portman and an analysis, and she discovered basically it's a social and housing issue. And it was at that time, let's say, largely an academic and social policy debate. In the 2000s, energy poverty was still not explicitly addressed at the EU legislation, but affordability and consumer protection specifically were discussed, but were not framed really as a standalone issue. And then between 2010 and 17, with the rising energy prices and also the aftermath of the financial crisis, the awareness increased, just like we experienced it as well now during the latest crisis. And energy poverty became more and more visible, but it really lacked a formal recognition. The turning point really came here in the Clean Energy for All Europeans package. And for the first time there, energy poverty was really explicitly mentioned in EU legislation. And member states were required to consider it also in their national energy and climate plans, shortly at the NECPs. And then ultimately, the European Green Deal is the policy package that we all consider is really seminal. And their energy poverty became really framed within the broader context of the just transition, and it really became recognized, and that, social climate energy policies must be socially fair and deliver also and consist also energy poverty. Right now, energy poverty is treated as a cross-cutting issue, a multi-level policy issue, and it is really much connected to all the fields, starting from energy, housing, social, as well as health and climate policies, of course. And it is acknowledged as well in the EU agenda that it requires really a coordinated action across all the different levels, like horizontally, vertically, but also diagonally. And this kind of evolution we can see is also not only a technical, but connected to also economical, that Marilise just also explained very well, but it's really a structural challenge that it really needs integrated solutions. And let me just quickly show you the next slide. So what does the EU does, what the member states do, and the local and regional authorities do. So let's start with the EU level, which sets the overall EU framework. The national level translates these laws set up by the European Union and programs into the national level, and then the local level really implements and identifies the real needs of the citizens and the energy poor households. And it is all under the umbrella of the subsidiarity principle. So the EU sets the direction, but implementation really happens so close as possible to the citizens. So the EU does set basically a common definition in the EED that Marie-Lise just explained, and also in the Social Climate Fund. It has creates the local obligations, but also provides funding and frameworks such as the Cohesion Fund, but also the LIFE projects and also the Social Climate Fund, and issues as well recommendations and guidance. So EU creates the rule of the game. Member states, what they do is basically they translate this, and this is the direct model responsibility. So it defines and measures nationally which indicators to use, also drafts the NDCPs, the subsidy schemes and compensation measures, but also implements the Social Climate Fund, for instance. So it really depends on the countries if they want to define it or not, or how they want to address it, and how to design also the renovation grants, for instance. So this is basically where the targeting decisions take place. And then the local level is really where energy becomes, I would say, real. So local authorities identify really the households at risk. They deliver the support and they coordinate the housing officers, social workers, and energy agencies, or operate one-stop shops that I will come to you in a second. So the local level is the implementation and the trust, basically where the trust also lies. And that's why I put here also a slide where gender becomes actually really visible. But the question remains, is gender really systematically integrated or not? And that's why I put here as well, the errors. So with the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, we are connected to the local level, but we try to channel it as well to the EU back. Okay, so just to sum this first part a little bit up, today energy poverty is clearly embedded in the EU framework. It has a strong foundation. It is recognized as a cross-cutting issues. The Commission also adopted the recommendation on energy poverty in 2020. A new one will come this year. And it is legally identified. Yeah. So it's not optional or informal as it was before. It is really obligational. But on the member states level, it is really the operationalization is on the member states level. So this creates, of course, some trade-offs that we have to think of, because this flexibility respects, on the one hand side, of course, the subsidiarity principle, but it creates as well an uneven protection of levels, right? And I had to, because of the time limit, I had it on hold for now, the Climate Social Fund regulation, the slide, but we can come back to that in the discussion. But in December 2025, there was the release also of the European Affordable Housing Plan. Take a look at it. And still to come this year is specifically a very important package is the Citizens' Energy Package and also the EU Anti-Poverty Strategy. And especially the Citizens' Energy Package will also strengthen the framework of energy poverty. Where we came from. So I'm shifting now slowly to my work as well at the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. So from 2016 to 20, there was the Energy Poverty Observatory that basically laid the ground foundation of our work that we are doing right now. And since 2020, there was the establishment of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, where we focus right now more on the implementation side and focusing on the local governments. I put here also in the box what is available on our website. So it's several publications. It's a lot of handbooks, really hands-on. We have the EPA Atlas which is a huge database with a lot of inspiring cases as well, and international projects and also organizations. We have a plethora of online courses and trainings material as well available. It's a lot of hours, you can go through it, where you can really dig deep into energy poverty. And we have also already had 2 calls of technical assistances where we help local governments to tackle energy poverty. But I will tell you on that also in a second. So we are kind of the European Commission's initiative, which is the collaborative network of several stakeholders, such as energy agencies, NGOs, researchers, practitioners. And we have also our antennas. One of them is here in the participants I've seen. Lydia is here. And we are trying to accelerate the just energy transition of European local governments. And our vision is really to eradicate energy poverty. And the mission is to be the central platform and the expertise in Europe. And we do that with 3 core objectives. Basically, we are this network where we are in contact with all the different stakeholders, and we involve them through several events like the lunch talk, which is also today at 1 o'clock if you want to join. Then we have several webinars focusing on particular topics. Marie-Lise just mentioned also quickly the summer energy poverty, also about the heat. We had one about this last year, for instance. We have also another objective is to develop data further and structure also knowledge and inform policy. So we collect case studies. We also publish several articles on specific topics, and we synthesize also lessons learned, such as today. And I wanted to just say that what I will do in the next couple of minutes is really channeling back from several projects that has been underdone in Europe. So really to understand the local expertise. So we are channeling it back. And lastly, the third objective of EPA is really increase the capacity of local communities, meaning through our technical assistance and also hands-on support. And I'm going to show you now one practical example, but basically what is the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that was recasted in 2024. It's a very important legislation that requires to enhance the energy performance of buildings across all member states. So the idea is to really accelerate the building renovation, to reduce GHG emissions, improve energy efficiency, and address as well, and it was included, energy poverty, and ensure as well healthier, more comfortable buildings. One part of it is it's outlined the one-stop shops. So in all European countries in the next years, we will see, I would always say in German, like, we're gonna have a lot of popping up mushrooms. You're gonna see a lot of one-stop shops opening. And so what is a one-stop shop? It's basically an advice center. It can be online, but also digital. It provides people, citizens, housing owners, apartment owners, support that you can get how to renovate your home. And there are different services and different realities, but typically the one-stop shops offer information and raising awareness, how to maybe change behavior, but also how to lower your energy bills. It's an energy advice, but also the technical advice is offered there. Sometimes it also offers support and permits and administration, and sometimes also legal advice if your house is, for instance, illegally built and what to do. And also it can help you in coordinating the contractors. So if several services need to be done. So basically it's really to simplify the process, because a renovation you always do only once usually a year, in your lifetime. It's a very complicated process, and we need to provide support on that. And here. This is a one-stop shop that is movable. It's an old maritime container that has been refurbished, and it traveled across several geographies in Portugal. And it provided free energy audits to people who entered. And also it provided support to citizens in improving their home comfort and reducing also their energy bills. So basically people could go in and show their energy bills, and the experts could show you how to reduce it. This is one of it. You can see it's also even with a PV. The energy experts had a scooter even to go to do the audits. So everything was thought of basically. And here you can see it was running 5 months. It's still operational, and it changed the location. It was close to Lisbon, on the other side of the Tejo. And the project in these 5 months really reached a lot of people. It was over 363 visitors, 256 audits and energy assessments were made for free, which is really, really huge for that time. And also over 130 potential beneficiaries for an energy voucher program were identified and helped with the application process. And let's come now to the gendered aspect of one-stop shops in general. So we know from previous research that women are statistically more likely to be tenants, and that means also more often to have a lower agency, unfortunately, when it comes to initiating renovation processes. So if you don't own the property, you cannot decide to insulate or replace, for instance, the heating system, or what we just heard, to install a PV panel, as simple as it is. So already at the level of the housing position, access is really unequal. Then the second is that women may have less access to capital as well. So there's the persistent income and pension gaps that mean that upfront investments or co-financing requirements can become really real barriers. Third one is the time poverty. So as women still carry a lot of disproportional share of unpaid care work, as we know, it is really complex to follow up the renovation schemes because of the long application systems. As I said, also the contracting coordination is a problem, and all of this requires, of course, time, and time as well is not distributed equally, unfortunately. So in here, one-stop shops matter. They can reduce this administrative burden. They can provide tailored advice instead of really this one-size-fits-all solution. And they can integrate social services and energy advice. When we talk about one-stop shops, we often assume that access is also neutral, but it isn't, in fact. So we need to ask who walks into them, who has time, and who trusts them. So usually design also starts with something very basic as the location. So when this one-stop shop was thought of first, we encouraged the implementers as well to put it into a really central location. Central location means close to the markets, so also where women can easily access it. And instead of a central administrative building, from the municipality, which feels maybe even intimidating. Or go into a neighborhood center where people already go, So it's accessible for caregivers, elderly women, and single parents. So these questions we have to think about. Then another problem or point to always think about is, are the opening hours compatible as well with care responsibilities? So typically some services are open only from 9 to 5, but we need to change that as well. And basically, design choices are not minor details. They really determine uptake. So if the one-stop shops are designed only as technical advice centers, they will primarily serve homeowners who can anyways afford the renovation, or digitally literate households or middle income groups, and not because it's a bad intention, but because of its design. Yeah, and application procedures often require digital literacy, scan in documents, and so on. But we need gender sensitive design as well, which means also reducing the bureaucratic friction. Yeah. And that's why here it would mean also somebody who supports you in filling out these documents, also offering paper-based, for instance. And we need, of course, the trusted intermediaries, and also that the energy coaches, that there is trust between the citizens and the intermediaries. Yeah, very important. Let me go on to the next slide. The Tenian housing position. So women are generally as well overrepresented in single parent households, among elderly tenants, and more generally, women are disproportionately presented also, unfortunately, in lower income housing segments. And as we know, renovation schemes often prioritize homeowners. That means that people who already own property have more also agency to trigger renovation processes and access. So what happens to tenants is the main question. So some thoughts also for later discussion is, what would gender sensitive design mean? It would mean as well to provide tenant specific advice. It would mean also offer mediation between landlord and tenants. It would mean also informing tenants about their rights. Under the EPBD, it's also required. And importantly, it would mean also flagging the risks of rent increases after the renovation. So, because otherwise, in fact, we are facing this uncomfortable paradox, I would say, that public money is improving either buildings, but it can also, in extreme cases, also displace vulnerable women, called also the renoviction, that we want to avoid. So it's because of the renovation that people have to move. So this is another aspect. Then let's move on to the financial design and the credit access. So many renovation schemes require upfront investments and co-financing and access to the credit, even when the subsidy schemes are quite high, in some cases even to 80-90%. They are often expected to be pre-financed as part of the cost, and some energy poor or majority doesn't have these upfront costs available. So especially also what we know from other projects is that older women, especially like elderly women or widowers, may have really limited savings and may not consider it as well credit worthy by the banks. So there we can also use some new inspiring financial models. So it would mean a zero interest pre-financing model, no upfront payment required for vulnerable groups. Also, unbilled payment options through the energy bills can be applicable here. Microgrant components for low-income households. And of course, very important, this is a simplified eligibility criteria. Communication. So if one-stop shop's communication focus only on, let's say, property value increase, the technical performance indicators, the carbon savings, it often resonates more with male homeowners, as we have seen. It's not intentionally, but it's structurally again. Here, gender-sensitive approach would communicate and emphasize the health benefits, the comfort and care, the protection against also price shocks, so prevention basically, and stability also for children and elderly relatives. Yeah. Then the staffing and representation, also very important, is the question, who works in the one-stop shops? Are local women also visible as advisors? Are women technical experts? Is the team diverse? Is staff trained in vulnerability awareness? All that matters, yeah. It's because representation also creates trust and shapes trusts. And very practical. Some women may not feel also very comfortable in allowing also unknown contractors in their home, that we also heard from several projects. So it's access is not financial and administrative, it's really relational. I think I'm moving on now to the technical assistance call. So I invite you all to take a look at our EPA website, because right now we have the third call for technical assistance open. What is the technical assistance? It's if you're dealing with energy poverty and you want to work further on it, we have a program right now opened where we can support you with our experts. And if you're a local municipality, you can apply and receive support. We opened the technical assistance this week on the 16th of February. The application is right now open until the 31st of March. Here you have all the required and important links for the technical assistance. Today, the lunch talk will also delve into the requirements and the details. So, but just quickly, we have for this call 50 proposals that are going to be selected all over Europe. You will receive, or you can give as well, if you're in the pool of experts, a tailored support. It's for the local municipalities around 60 to 150 hours of support. It can last up to 9 months, and you're always connected to a broader network. And the eligible applicants are consortia with local governments and also other partners like NGOs, social centers, civil society organizations, and so on. And if you have further questions, you can always come back to me after this workshop. And I think I am finishing up. Yes.
Thank you very much, Christina. That was very interesting and very clear as well, that you showed again like how intersectional and gender perspective is key when it comes to public policies. And it was also very interesting to see how energy poverty has evolved within the EU policy from recognition to implementation. So thank you. So we have some questions in the chat box related to the one-stop shops. So maybe if you want to give a short answer, because we need to move on with the next speaker and then we go to the panel discussion. For all of you we are going to send all the links and all the reports that the speakers were mentioning, also the links to the call. But maybe, Christina, if you want to give a short answer to the questions of the one-stop shops that are on the chat. So we have one question.
I didn't read them yet.
Is, how? Okay, I don't know. I'm going to read it for you. Don't worry. So one of the questions is how economical and low price is the one-stop shop? And we work with local women. How will they be able to afford the shop? That's one question. Then I think we have another one. Someone is asking about the technical assistance, just if it's just for European or also for African countries. Yeah, but maybe
maybe for the very short. Usually it's what we usually know is the municipalities open the one-stop shops. They are financed through them, sometimes as well by other foundings and founders. But basically it's municipal money. Can be also different budget lines, as said. And so the concept is scalable and replicable. And also to Africa, we have several. For instance, the Portuguese one, a similar has been evolving right now also in Italy, in a van, so it's possible. But the technical assistance runs only in Europe, in the European Union, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much, Christina. Thanks so much. So now we will move to the panel discussion. This is the moment in which we will try to bring everything together the structural perspective, the EU policy framework, and also some practical experience from the ground. So joining the discussion are Marlies, Cristina, and we're also very pleased to welcome Irene Gonzalez. She works in project management and advocacy on energy poverty and energy transition at Ingeniería Sin Fronteras. And she is also a member of the Alliance Against Energy Poverty. So before we open the conversation to all the panelists, we would like first to hear from Irene's perspective from your practice. So welcome, Irene, and please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'll also try to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yeah, as you were saying, I will try to share like two practical examples of how from Ingeniería Sin Fronteras we try to support like experiences of tackling energy poverty from a gender perspective. First of all, I would also like to say that I didn't include that in my presentation because it's like very recent. But these days, the Spanish government approved an energy poverty strategy, which has a specific section on energy poverty and gender, a feminization of energy poverty, which didn't had in the first draft. And we did a participatory process in which we asked them to include the gender and energy poverty perspective, and they did. And it's interesting. This strategy, from our perspective, lacks structural things, but it's a really moving forward considering the work done in other the perspective. I mean, it's a really interesting document in terms of how it captures a structural analysis of energy poverty and its different solutions. So I would very much, it's obviously only in Spanish, but I would very much recommend, I think that it should be in English. DeepL, it's really a fantastic tool. But I think it's interesting because it does capture the feminization of energy poverty in an interesting way, and it also captures what Christina was telling about the one-stop shops and trying to make some kind of one-stop advice points in the all of the state, so to tackle energy poverty from a comprehensive perspective. The problem that we have in Spain, and I believe in most countries, is that or we tackle energy poverty from the social services perspective, or we tackle it from an energy transition perspective. And it's usually two different parts of government that run these sectors. So it's really difficult to find comprehensive solutions. And that's, I think, one of the most important tasks that we have in that sense. So what we do have, we work, for example, very much in energy poverty, supporting the Alliance Against Energy Poverty, which is a social movement in Catalonia. And what we tried to do is, after the crisis of like the financial housing bubble that 2008 and something, we had a lot of problems of disconnections and families not being able to afford energy bills. So we started like slowly to create this Alliance Against Energy Poverty. And then we started around like 2017, 18, what we call these collective assemblies and these collective movements trying to achieve a ban on disconnections that we actually achieved. In Catalonia, it's forbidden to disconnect vulnerable people from energy services during the whole year. And we calculated that from 2015 to 2020, we were able to prevent 200,000 disconnections of energy, water, and gas, which we believe is a really good achievement for the well-being of most of the families that are in this situation. I will run very quickly on that because that's not what I want to say, but we did our anniversary recently, and we tried. We are a movement, a very women-composed movement. I would say that 80% of people in the Alliance Against Energy Poverty are women, and are women that are like leading the movement and are trying to be in the forefront, trying to achieve like the debt cancellation, the ban on disconnections, because one of the main ideas that we try to build together is that we are not only suffering energy poverty, but we are like kind of activists. We're part of change. So I believe that that's interesting because that's how we also achieve like some legislative and some kind of advocacy changes that if we remain in the like more victim or more like receiving part, we wouldn't be able to achieve. Um, we why do we I mean we work with collective assemblies. What we try to It's like a huge one stop shop without like so much like technical background. What we try to do is like we do assemblies every 2 weeks where there's like a lot of people gathering. Once have been in energy poverty situations. Some new families are now in energy poverty situations. Some of us are like more supporting the assembly and bring technical knowledge to it, for example. And what we try to do is like create a safe space where all together, like in a round, we can share our problems and try to bring like solutions from people that had these problems to other people that now have these problems. And that is interesting because that helps people to come front and like to talk about some things that they feel guilty or ashamed of, because energy poverty, it's like any situation related to poverty and related to debt. It's a difficult burden like for the families. And then in these collective assemblies we also try to understand what is happening on the ground with energy poverty. For example, these recent assemblies, we've been having a lot of fraud cases, not big companies trying to sue people for fraud or for irregular disconnection. So now we're trying to have meetings with the government around how like for fraud cases should be tackled without endangering the mental well-being of families. No, so we try to do the assemblies, advocacy, communication, and when we cannot solve the problems with all of that, then we have done some like more occupying of like enterprises or things like that, because we also believe that we need to make our voice heard to the companies. I think that we believe then that it's not usually also remarked with energy poverty is like in Spain, at least, private companies have a great and very massive role in energy poverty. So it's not only about looking solutions for families, but it's also about limiting profits and benefits of big companies, providing families with a better access to energy without paying these prices that are, because we believe that if we try, we always try to keep up with the prices that the market provide, like suggested. Then, in the end, in most cases, what we're also doing is like we are also transferring public money to private enterprises because we are helping families to pay their bills. But then this money it's going to private like companies, and these companies have huge benefits. So we also try to build what we think is a fairer energy like model that doesn't have like energy poverty as one of the externalities. We believe that because we have been working a lot in other projects also with WECF on what a feminist space is regarding energy poverty. And what we see when women came with their problems around energy poverty, and most of the people that come to the assemblies are women, because women are the people in charge of the household and the energy bills most of the cases, is that we need to create, if we want to promote this empowerment and this change, that we need to create, to believe in their knowledge, to believe that they are experts in their own lives, they know about their energy poverty situation, so they need to be part of the solutions because they really know what they are going through and what they need. And we need to respect all like different cognitive styles. We need to respect and we need to avoid this one-to-one, I am the technical expert and I know and you don't know, so you need to believe in what I say. It's like, okay, you know what you're going through. I can adjust that with some ideas that I have, but then it's like an equal conversation. And that it's very important to bring people into the solution. So that's why we do these kind of like collective assemblies, because the first thing that we say is like that we need to leave guilt and shame out of the assembly, because we don't care if people are like in an irregular connection, we don't care if there's quotas, we don't care. The only thing we care about is that they need to have proper energy connection, and then we're gonna work all together for that, and that helps. And we listen when people bring like health issues or mental health issue or other preoccupations. So we also created a separate mutual support group, also with an European with European support, with the Empowerment Project, where we also, because we realize that people, they do not only have energy poverty issues, they have energy poverty issues, and they have gender-based violence, they had other poverty issues, they have a lot of things that we cannot solve or we cannot help with. So we also created these other support groups so that we really create like this. We learn about our rights, we fight against guilt, we create social bonding, we empower ourselves, and we do not judge, which is, believe, really important, because there's a lot of like accumulation of judgment in poverty situations regarding to families that believe that they are in poverty because they didn't do something like right. And 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 that's like some sentences that like the women that are part of the alliance said, no, that the alliance taught them like how not to feel shame and guilt or to restore dignity. And I mean, we can solve a technical issue, but if we do not try to, if we deny that these other issues are around the energy poverty problem, that we do not solve a structural situation of the family, no. So from our perspective, it's very important. And that's, I will go very quickly. And then we always say that mothers, single parent families, which are usually single mother families, have a lot of energy poverty issues. So for example, we knew that people had problems coming to our assemblies, so we did a child story and a child book so that mothers could tell the children what is energy poverty without feeling guilt about emotions, no. So we try to understand that it's a family in energy poverty, a household in energy poverty, but as I think that Marilis also said, each member of the household feels different the situation of energy poverty depending on their gender, their origin, and a lot of other intersectional aspects. So we need to understand all of them to try to find like global like solutions. And then very quickly, I also wanted to share in 2 minutes one other experience that we are working with in the Gender for Power project, also that also Marilis mentioned, because this one, the alliance is more like, I would say, like from the social services like perspective, and in the other one, in the Gender for Power, and in our example that it's La Bordeta, it's an energy community. What we try to do is like to break like this ceiling that energy communities have, then that are usually like white middle-aged men being a part of energy communities. At least in Spain, it's like that, white middle-aged men. So we are trying to work a lot in the energy community about how an energy community is not just sharing kilowatts hour, but an energy community is understanding a different way of how energy is embedded in all the things that we do in our everyday life. So it's how we move, it's how we dress, it's how we eat, and it's how we obviously have the lights on and how our fridge going. But it's a whole situation. So we have managed, like also with the support of the projects, to try to incorporate the energy poverty perspective in the community, to try to incorporate the gender perspective in the community with like with like gender trainings, energy poverty trainings. We even have, because we believe that indicators are difficult when you go to local aspects because they hide some situations. So we made our own indicators in the assembly to identify energy poverty cases in our community, so that we could bring people in energy poverty into the energy community. And now we have a pretty interesting gender balance considering energy communities, and our governing council, it's like entirely formed by women. So I think that that it's possible also to That's what we are doing in the Gender for Power. But it's possible to found like these renovation and energy communities projects to try to feminize them, not only bringing women, but also changing how energy is considered and worked about like in these communities. And that's all. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Irene. Thank you, and congratulations for the work you're doing, and also congratulations, Spain, on your new strategy on energy poverty. We're looking forward to see how it goes. So thank you again. This case shows that energy poverty is not only addressed through policy, it is also tackled through collective action, mutual support, and community empowerment. So I think it was very inspiring, and it reminds us that beyond legislation, real change also happens when people organize, learn their rights, and build solidarity to protect dignity. So now we will go to the panel discussion. We have 20 more minutes. So we have prepared some questions for the three of you, and we would like you to answer with some short answers so that we have time to listen to all of you. So the first question, and maybe if Marilise wants to start, and then Christina, and then Irene. So the first question is, in concrete terms, what does it actually mean to design an energy policy that are gender sensitive from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks. I can start. I think when we talk about energy poverty and also the quality of housing and yeah, access to renovation programs, which are very difficult for tenants, especially. That would be maybe my first recommendation would be to simplify the processes, to have access to the programs, especially for people that do not have access to digital tools or access to the information or to this technical information, yeah. But also to have dedicated programs for tenants. Repeating what Christina said, to have this pre-financing of subsidies. I think Austria has implemented this pre-financing, or maybe Vienna City, and it worked very well as a model for renovation programs for tenants. Yeah, I think I cannot repeat enough on collecting gender disaggregated data. This is really important. It's not only about sex disaggregated data, but also about gender. How are the roles being distributed, the lived experience? Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be my first recommendation.
Thank you, Marilise. Thank you. Yeah. Christina, from your perspective?
It's funny because I can only agree to Marilise on every point. I had as well the same thoughts, basically. Good diagnosis, but maybe to add some further ones. The Social Climate Fund also addresses transport poverty and mobility poverty. So women also rely more on the public transport systems. So, and also rural areas are more constrained. Maybe we can have also the thought about that or in that direction. But it's also connected to gender, then basically also some long-term solution measures and not just quick fixes, that's really important. So not short-term compensation, but really long-term. Yeah, and then I mean, maybe also who sits in the advisory boards, who designs, who participates, what Irene just said as well. Yes. So in addition to the monitoring and data and gender disaggregated data and upfront costs and all of that.
Thank you, Christina. Irene, from your perspective?
Yeah, I agree with with Christina and Marilise. I would maybe add, for example, we are trying to work very hard for like automatic energy benefits because we believe that it's difficult to like some of the of the benefits have like huge non-take-ups because like it's difficult for people to ask like bureaucratic. There's some bureaucratic problems at some point that could be solved nowadays, and also, for example, for us, a gender-based measure, it's a measure like forbidding disconnections, for example, without asking people to prove their situation, but to like for here in Catalonia, and I will be like 30 seconds. When a family doesn't pay the bill, then the company is obliged to go to social services and ask them if they know the family. And if they don't know the family, they cannot be disconnected. And if they know the family and the family is in a situation, they cannot be disconnected. But the family doesn't have to prove that they are poor. And that's very important because we also need to work in mental health regarding poverty situations. So I think that putting the focus in regulators and companies and institutions, it's important because sometimes we put the focus in families having to prove that they deserve benefits. And I think that would be also a feminist perspective of it.
It's very interesting. Thank you. Since we're running out of time, I'm going to make the next two questions, and you can answer. Like, there's no need the three of you to answer. Maybe the one who would like to answer, and then the last one. Yes, I would like to hear from the three of you. So, building on what we were speaking, when we look at the EU instruments such as Social Climate Fund, which aim to protect vulnerable households, do you think that these current tools are really sufficient to protect women and structurally vulnerable groups from energy poverty? Maybe Christina or anyone.
I mean, it's a major first step forward, definitely, because in the end, it will be visible in our pockets, the ETS tool. And it's a good first step, but it's not sufficient on its own. Definitely not. Because as far as I know, I have only read the social climate plan from Sweden, but it's usually and typically I don't think that gender is explicitly mentioned as a binding requirement. So the targeting mechanisms will vary. So the tools are promising, but protection is really not yet automated, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
There's
you.
room.
If Christina or Irene wants to add something, please.
I just wanted to say that we've been receiving a lot of like European funding, like from Next Generation, and what we've learned so far, asking like for data, for official data, it's like 1% of that went to vulnerable housing regarding renovation in Spain, in Catalonia. So I think that in the social climate funds, that's one of the things that we really need we really need to ensure that this money goes to like tackle energy poverty and not other kind of more easy fixing like households or families. I know it's a huge challenge because people are in other priorities, but it's really important that we tackle that for renovation and energy transition because otherwise they will be out of the energy transition.
Thank you, Irene. Well, the next question, this is also connected to the question of the outreach. And how do you think that can local citizen-led initiatives better reach those who are most affected, especially when administrative, digital, or housing barriers limit access?
Well, maybe I can start. I think Irene has probably the best methodologies and example based on the Alliance experience. But this is something that we are implementing at the moment through the Gender for Power project, where we want to work with a household affected by energy poverty, mainly single mothers and elderly women. And we are quite new in Munich working in these activities. WCF or Germany worked a lot in European level, but in the Munich geographical scope, it's new. And so we are really practicing right now the experience of reaching out to household and yeah, finding spaces and moments where they are open to talk about that or to take time to listen to us because this is really not their first priority. They have way too many other tasks on the list to deal with and other problems rather than talking about renewable energy or renovations or etc. But some aspect that are working is to have like this collective assembly system, regular meeting space where there is no judgment, safe environment. Also working with established network and associations that are already there, that already have the trust. They have their own network. Yes, I think that's and also working. So we are also working with energy communities and working with very tangible example of benefit that it can provide. Seeing the energy being produced by solar panels, like on the app, or seeing the dividend that they can receive by being members of energy community. By that, I will also think about for energy communities to have how to say inclusivity processes and programs to have access to these memberships because it's also cost money to join an energy community. So there is also some processes of collecting dividends on the side and giving away some membership for free for people having lower financial possibilities, for example. So yeah, some concrete example of benefits as well.
Thank you, Marilis. I know if Irene, maybe he wants to add something else.
No, I agree with what Marley said. I already did my presentation, so I will let Christina do. But I would like to because I think that, for example, the EPA perspective about like local administrations is really interesting because putting the focus in local initiatives and local administrations, it's really because it solves one of the main problems that is like mistrust. Like there's a lack of trust in the energy system in general, and there's a lack of knowledge because it's a heavily technical aspect, I don't know the word in English now. It's a technical issue, I would say. So people feel really miles away from the energy system. So the local initiatives, energy communities, local assemblies, local cafes, everything. I think that helps to bring people into the energy, and it helps when I'm not a social. I'm an engineer, but I believe that we need social people with social backgrounds in the energy system, because at some point we're not able to establish bonds with people because we only say like kilowatts hours and savings and what we need to say is like things more regarded about well-being, thermal comfort, and life, and that I think that helps in a local in a local level.
Thank you very much, Irene. And now the last question in the last couple of minutes that we have, we would like to hear from the three of you. Looking ahead, what should be the top advocacy priority for civil society organizations working on energy poverty and gender in the coming years? It's not easy, but maybe an idea.
I think a lot what we said already, but so the priority should be moved from basically recognition to really operationalization, actually, I think. So really pushing for gender disaggregated data and reporting, but also ensuring targeting is well done in the Social Climate Fund and so on. Yeah, putting the gender perspective as well in the energy governance systems. Yeah, just to put 3 points to summarize. there has been a lot of things already said, I think.
Yeah, I will pass it to Marilise, and I will say that I agree 100% with like recognition, for example.
Yeah, I also completely agree. Maybe I could add to dedicate some funding on programs that are, yeah, for vulnerable households, or dedicated, I don't know, training programs for women to enter in energy citizen initiatives. Or yeah, I think it is difficult to have dedicated funding per for individuals, but you can go through CSOs. Actually, this is what we are made for, to represent civil society organization, civil society. So to also have dedicated funding, so we make sure that the money and benefits are going to the right target groups. But in general, I
Thank
agree
you.
with everything else. Yeah, it's very important.
Well, thank you, Marilise. And as we come to the end of our session, again, thank you very much, Marilise, Irene, Christina, for being here today and for the valuable insights that you gave us.